The hidden gap. Why success isn't enough. 99% of men completely miss the single most important factor that naturally pulls women in. You see this exact scenario play out every single day in the real world. Think about the men who seem to have absolutely everything going for them on paper. They are physically fit, sharply dressed, effortlessly confident, and highly successful in their careers. They drive the right cars, live in the right neighborhoods, and have no shortage of ambition. Yet, despite checking every single box on the societal checklist, these exact same men constantly struggle to build deep, meaningful connections. They go on dates that lead nowhere, find themselves stuck in friendships they want to escape, or constantly deal with women pulling away from them. It leaves them incredibly frustrated because they did everything they were told to do to become attractive, yet the results just aren't matching their effort. The harsh reality that most men fail to grasp is that raw, lingering attraction is never built on your appearance, your bank account, or your social status. Those superficial traits might grab a woman's initial attention for a brief moment, but they completely fail to hold it. True attraction operates on an entirely different wavelength. It relies entirely on small, powerful, under the radar habits that communicate directly with a woman's emotional core without her even consciously realizing what is happening. While most men are busy shouting about their achievements and trying to impress a woman from the outside in, the high value man is quietly triggering her psychology from the inside out. He isn't putting on a performance. He is projecting an undeniable aura of security, presence, and control that hits her on an instinctual level. The good news is that these powerful habits are not complicated to learn, nor do they require you to have millions of dollars or years of dating experience. You don't need to buy expensive gifts, orchestrate elaborate, over the top dates, or memorize manipulative pickup lines and mind games. In fact, those flashy tactics usually backfire because they scream desperation and show that you are trying too hard to buy her approval. Instead, mastering this hidden gap simply requires deep awareness, a shift in your intention, and a willingness to step away from the shallow, predictable patterns that the vast majority of men fall into. It is about moving away from transactional thinking, where you give something just to get something back, and instead focusing entirely on how your energy alters the room when you walk into it. Today, we are completely pulling back the curtain on this hidden gap and breaking down 5 subtle, highly effective psychological triggers that are deeply rooted in human nature and timeless Stoic wisdom. These are not your typical cliche internet flirting tips that you've heard 1,000 times before. This is a practical masterclass in emotional maturity, self mastery, and behavioral psychology. By understanding and applying these 5 specific principles, you will completely transform how a woman experiences your presence. You will stop being just another predictable guy trying to win her over and instead become an unforgettable, grounding force that she naturally craves to be around. Secret 1: the power of intentional touch. The vast majority of men move through the dating world under the false impression that attraction is a game won entirely through words. They stress over what text message to send next, scramble to find the perfect joke, and memorize fascinating stories just to keep the conversation from falling flat. But human connection doesn't happen on a purely logical or verbal level. It runs infinitely deeper than the words coming out of your mouth. Women are incredibly perceptive, and they respond heavily to your physical awareness, your body language, and your immediate presence in the room. When you rely solely on talking to build a connection, you are completely missing the physical aspect of communication that has guided human attraction for thousands of years. By staying completely hands off and rigid, you inadvertently create a sterile, platonic wall that turns an otherwise great date into a polite business meeting. The single biggest mistake men make when trying to fix this is using physical touch with hidden motives. They only reach out to touch a one when they are trying to escalate things or want something in return, and women can sense that transactional energy instantly. The second your touch feels calculated or demanding, it sets off alarm bells. destroys comfort, and creates an immense amount of pressure. True high value attraction is built on the exact opposite approach, using light, intentional, and entirely non sexual touch with zero expectations. When you can offer physical contact without needing a single thing back, you completely separate yourself from the crowd. You aren't touching her to get a reaction. You are touching her simply because you are comfortable in her space. Think about how naturally this changes the dynamic when done correctly. A casual, brief touch on her forearm to emphasize a funny point you are making, or a gentle, reassuring hand on her lower back to guide her smoothly through a crowded, hectic room speaks volumes. These micro gestures communicate more than an hour of smooth talking ever could. Without saying a word, you are broadcasting that you are a calm, present leader who is completely in tune with her environment. It immediately sends a subconscious signal of safety, warmth, and protection. Once a woman feels entirely safe and comfortable in your physical presence, her natural guard drops. And that exact feeling of safety becomes the absolute foundation for deep, genuine attraction. Secret 2: respectful friction. When it comes to showing romantic interest, most men helplessly oscillate between two extreme failures. On one side, you have the guys who try way too hard, constantly throwing out over the top compliments and love bombing a woman until they completely suffocate the dynamic with desperation. On the exact opposite side, you have the overly cautious men who hold themselves back so much out of fear of rejection that they end up hiding their interest entirely, landing themselves straight into the friend zone. True confidence sits squarely in the middle of these two extremes. It is the art of creating a playful, warm atmosphere filled with subtle tension, where you openly show interest but remain completely detached from whether or not she validates you. You are inviting her into a fun, engaging interaction, but your self worth isn't riding on her reaction. To execute this perfectly, you have to break away from the habit of being a passive yes man who agrees with every single thing she says just to please her. If she mentions that she is absolutely obsessed with Italian food, a typical guy will just nod eagerly, agree, and ask her what her favorite restaurant is. A man who understands how to build playful friction will look at her, smile, and say, "Are you sure about that? Because you clearly haven't tried my homemade version yet." A simple, direct statement like this completely shifts the energy of the conversation. It instantly introduces your personality, challenges her playfully, and creates an engaging back and forth without you needing to beg for her approval or validation. You are showing her that you have your own flavor and character, which is infinitely more magnetic than just echoing her opinions. You solidify this playful friction by mastering the silent language of steady eye contact. Instead of looking away nervously the moment your eyes meet, hold her gaze for a beat longer than usual while you are talking or listening. Let that natural connection sit there for a second. Then calmly and casually look away to take a sip of your drink or scan the room before smoothly returning your attention right back to her eyes. This creates a powerful form of microtension, a subtle, exciting back and forth that keeps the interaction alive and dynamic. It clearly demonstrates to her that you are rooted, entirely comfortable in your own skin, and not intimidated by her presence, which is the exact definition of real, unshakable confidence. Secret 3: high value listening. We live in a world completely consumed by constant noise, pinging digital distractions, and endless surface level conversations. Because of this, genuine, deep listening has become an incredibly rare superpower. If you look closely at how most modern interactions go down, you will notice that almost nobody is actually paying attention to each other. Most men do not listen to understand. They listen purely to find their next cue to speak. While a woman is talking, their brains are actively firing, frantically formulating their next witty joke, calculating a fascinating story to tell, or figuring out how to steer the conversation back to themselves and their own achievements. They are completely stuck in their own heads, putting on a performance instead of being present. Women are highly intuitive and can spot this shallow, distracted energy from a mile away. It tells them instantly that you don't actually care about who they are. You just care about how you are being perceived. When you break away from this predictable pattern and give a woman your absolute, undivided attention, you give her something she rarely experiences from anyone else. You aren't checking your phone when it vibrates, you aren't scanning the room for distractions, and you aren't interrupting her to slide in your own opinion. Instead, you lock in, lock eyes, and listen to the underlying emotions and meaning behind her words. You ask thoughtful, open ended questions that naturally invite her to dive deeper into what she is sharing. And you effortlessly remember the small, specific details she mentioned half an hour ago. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus perfectly captured this timeless truth when he remarked that we have two ears and one mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. By shifting your entire focus away from trying to impress her with your thoughts and dedicating your energy to truly understanding hers, you completely rewrite the dynamic. You stop being a guy who is trying to sell himself, and you instantly become a rare, grounding presence that she deeply trusts and remembers long after the night is over. Secret 4: absolute emotional stability. Life is inherently unpredictable, chaotic, and messy, which means your dates and interactions are rarely going to go perfectly according to plan. The restaurant might lose your reservation. She might get stuck in traffic and show up 30 minutes late. She might loudly disagree with one of your core opinions, or her mood might suddenly shift due to a stressful day at work. What most men fail to realize is that these friction points are not inconveniences. They are natural, unspoken tests of your true character. They strip away whatever confident front you are putting on and reveal exactly who you are under pressure. Weak, insecure men react instantly to these shifts with outward anxiety, defensiveness, frustration, or quiet passive aggression. The moment an external situation goes off the rails, their internal state shatters, proving to everyone around them that they are easily shaken by things they cannot control. A man of absolute emotional stability handles these exact same chaotic shifts with a completely different energy. He doesn't panic, he doesn't complain, and he doesn't let his ego take the driver's seat. Instead, he simply pauses. He takes a breath, lets the moment settle, keeps his voice low and calm, and chooses to respond with total clarity, rather than reacting from raw impulse. If she is running late, he doesn't send passive aggressive texts. He calmly tells her to take her time and handles his business. If she disagrees with him, he doesn't get defensive. He smiles and welcomes the different perspective. He remains completely steady, acting as an unshakable anchor in the middle of a storm. In a modern world that feels increasingly chaotic and unstable, a man who cannot be easily thrown off course is an incredibly rare and magnetic find. This calm, solid energy provides an immediate, subconscious sense of safety and security that women deeply crave. When you show her that you have a rock solid internal foundation that isn't dependent on external circumstances, you prove without saying a word that you are a reliable leader who can be counted on when life gets genuinely difficult. Secret 5: the self respect to walk away. The single most powerful, counterintuitive principle of human attraction boils down to one critical skill: knowing exactly when to step back and walk away. The vast majority of men get caught up in a desperate, endless cycle of chasing after a woman's attention, practically begging for a text response, and completely rewriting their own schedules just to accommodate someone who isn't matching their effort. They operate from a mindset of deep scarcity, terrified that if they don't pursue her with everything they have, they will lose her forever. But a high value man views the entire dynamic through a completely different lens. He recognizes that his time, his attention, and his mental energy are incredibly valuable assets, and he formally refuses to distribute those assets freely to anyone who treats them as optional. He doesn't compromise his standards, alter his core principles, or tolerate hot and cold behavior just to keep a woman around for a little bit longer. When you choose to step back, It is absolutely essential to understand that this action must come from a place of deep, unshakable self respect, never from a place of childish anger, spite, or dramatic manipulation. You aren't playing a game, throwing a tantrum, or giving her the silent treatment just to get a reaction out of her. Instead, you are quietly and calmly choosing to invest your energy elsewhere because you recognize that the mutual respect and effort required for a real connection simply isn't present. This subtle shift in your behavior sends a massive, undeniable signal that shakes up her entire perception of you. It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that you do not rely on her validation, her approval, or her attention to feel complete or to establish your worth as a man. It shows her that you have a full, exciting, and deeply grounded life, packed with your own clear purpose, ambitious goals, and independent happiness. There is an absolute, unavoidable psychological law that governs human dynamics. Desperation repels, but raw self respect commands immediate attention. When a man endlessly chases, smothers, and overinvests, he completely kills the mystery and eliminates any opportunity for the woman to miss him or wonder about him. By choosing to step back when the effort isn't reciprocated, you completely remove that suffocating weight of pressure from the interaction. In that newly created space, her natural curiosity is given room to grow. She begins to wonder why you aren't acting like every other predictable guy who begs for her time. She starts to ask herself what makes you so secure, so centered, and so completely comfortable on your own. You completely stop the exhausting act of chasing, not because you are giving up, but because you have finally realized your own true value and refuse to settle for anything less.